Welcome to Harry's Deepenings, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you are new, some of you have been coming to our sessions for almost a year. We have sessions running through from Sunday all the way through to Friday, and we're studying the life of Baha'u'llah on the Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and an incredible letter about the state of the world on Wednesdays, which everybody is welcome to. The link always is the same, as is the time, as is my face, although that should change, perhaps some say. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, a good friend of mine, Mr. Rainn Wilson. He is an actor, a writer, a producer, and best known, I'm sure, by all of you for his skills with a bassoon. He's written a book about it, in fact, which I strongly recommend you have a look at. He also had something going on as a character called Dwight Schrute on NBC's The Office, from what I understand. His other works include Smurfs, The Lost Village, 6 Feet Under, Almost Famous, The Rocker, and Don't Tell a Soul. Among his many diverse talents and initiatives, Rainn co-founded the digital media and entertainment company Soul Pancake, of which I've done videos on. You've probably not seen me on there, but look deep and you might find something. Soul Pancake worked to promote creative, uplifting arts and entertainment, as well as the Lily Haiti Foundation, which is an educational initiative that works to empower at-risk girls and women in rural Haiti through the arts. Rainn also hosts and is part of a variety of programs, including his own program, Baha'i Blogcast. We are very blessed to have him here today with us. So we are asking dear Rainn to tell us a little bit about why he is a Baha'i. And Rainn has been prepared for this interview, very much so. The warm-up interviewer was, of course, Oprah Winfrey. So we had that just to warm him into this. And here it is, the real deal on Harry's Deepening with myself, Dave Kayani. Dear Rainn Wilson, without saying much more, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And we're going to pass it over to you now. If you could please do your thing, dear Rainn. Alapa and welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks so much. Wow, fantastic. What an honor. I can't believe you guys have been doing this for a year. Harry's Deepenings, that's fantastic. And Dave, before we get going, I just have to ask you about the giant stuffed duck over your right shoulder. What's going on there?
So, dear Rainn, my dad was a teacher, and in the UK, we have a character called Orville, which is a duck. And in order to make a lot of the kids who were setting cars on fire or stealing things, breaking into buildings, he'd make jokes about Orville. He passed away, and he is Harry, so this is in dedication to him. And that duck is like him sitting on my right shoulder. He's always with me. You're probably wondering, dear Rainn, what all these medals are, and it's slightly embarrassing. You're wondering how many medals, how many times I've ran for charity. I don't want to talk about that, Rainn. Whether it was, thousands at the New York Marathon, let's not talk about that. This is about you.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. People from all over the world. I saw someone said, greetings from Madagascar. I was like, wow, I don't think I've ever... No, I had a cab driver from Madagascar once. That I do remember. I was going to say, I don't know if I've ever spoken to someone from Madagascar, but people from all over the world, that's wonderful. We've got 237 people tuning in. Fabulous. Beautiful. So my name is Rainn Wilson. I'm mostly an actor, but I do a lot of producing and writing and directing as well. And more important than that is my greatest honor to acknowledge that I am a spiritual being inhabiting a weird human body for about 80 or 90 years on this earth, and I'm on a spiritual journey. And for me, being a member of the Baha'i faith gives that journey in this big, weird, ungainly body in Southern California focus, purpose, meaning, and inspiration. So I want to just talk a little bit about my spiritual journey. I prepared a little slideshow for you. I'm not very good at the PowerPoint or the screen share, but I would like to take you through a little bit about my journey, my thinking about why I am a Baha'i. I understand that some people here are curious about the Baha'i faith or maybe partway in their study about the Baha'i faith. So I just wanted to share my personal journey. I'm happy to, that won't take very long, about 35 minutes, and then we can answer some questions afterwards and just have a more intimate discussion. And that's basically it. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Why I'm a Baha'i, Rainn Wilson. Apologies in advance for my terrible PowerPoint skills, but this is the best I could do. If I had to boil down the Baha'i faith to one quote that most touched me and most inspired me, right now in my life, because this changes every 3 or 4 months, right now in my life, it would be this one. The betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds and through commendable and seemly conduct. Why is this quote important to me? Because we live in a time where many people do not believe the betterment of the world is possible. We live in a jaded and a cynical age. When I was growing up in the 1970s in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, we talked about world peace. You know, beauty contestants would be given their trophy, and they'd say, you know, I want to work for world peace. We believed, some would call it naively, that world peace was possible. In this day and age, I think the majority of people kind of feel like, well, we're never going to have world peace. The best we can do is just not blow things up. Maybe we'll not lob nuclear bombs at each other, and maybe we'll not destroy the earth through global warming and climate change. And, you know, maybe we'll just kind of like limp into the future without a vision for the future. So the idea that we can make the world better through pure and goodly deeds is really inspiring and important, and gives us something to hold on to, especially for young people. So many young people suffering through a crisis of this mental health epidemic that's going on in the Western world. I don't know about Madagascar, but in the United States, it's pretty horrific. The statistics are off the charts and jaw-dropping around anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, addiction, etc. But the important part of this quote, too, is what's after the "and," through commendable and seemly conduct. So this isn't just about pure and goodly deeds. Pure and goodly deeds are super important. But how we do those pure and goodly deeds is also equally important. Having one's conduct be commendable and seemly as we're doing the pure and goodly deeds. I think right now there's a lot of people doing pure and goodly deeds. Their conduct's not very commendable, and they're not very seemly. They're blaming, shaming, cutting down, insulting, politicking, feeling that in order to do their good deeds, they need to tear other people down. So this is an important part of the quote as well. So I grew up a member of the Baha'i faith in the 70s in the Seattle area. I learned some really beautiful teachings growing up as a kid in the Baha'i faith. I learned about the unity, the essential teaching of the Baha'i faith, which is the unity of God, of religion, and of the human species on this planet, that there is only one God, that this all-seeing, all-knowing, all-loving divine presence sends down these holy divine teachers every 500 or 1,000 years or so to help humanity move forward spiritually, that all of us sharing this planet are one human family. Yes, we're diverse, and diversity is wonderful. We're diverse in our skin colors. We're diverse in our creeds, in our belief systems, in our cultures, and that this creates a beautiful, variegated garden. Speaking of garden, it's so important to mention that it's Nowruz. Happy Nowruz to our Persian friends and friends from that area of the world. Nowruz is one of the earliest holy celebrations in human history. I mean, it started 2,000 years before the Christ. Some of the earliest acts of science have to do with Nowruz, and that was determining the midpoint where equal amounts of lights were in the northern hemisphere as the southern hemisphere, essentially calling out the first day of spring. So it's a connection between science and faith, and Nowruz translates to directly into new day. So this is a very important holiday for the Baha'is. It is the first day of the Baha'i calendar, the first day of the new year. So Happy New Year. That's all great. But for Baha'u'llah, the prophet, founder of the Baha'i faith, idea that there is a new day here, there is a spiritual new day that is on this land as well, besides a figurative, March 20th, March 21st new day. Uh, there is a new day of spiritual possibility, of spiritual healing that is here due to the revelation of Baha'u'llah. So there are countless, and it'd be a wonderful deepening for you guys to do here in Harry's Deepenings about a spiritual springtime, the divine springtime. There's tablets, prayers, letters, countless mentions of the image of springtime, the divine springtime, the spiritual springtime. So we're going into a physical springtime on this planet. There's beautiful flowers will start blooming any day now, trees as well. But more importantly, we have a spiritual springtime ahead of us. So, some other things I learned growing up as a Baha'i. Many of you know this. Forgive me. And by the way, I want to say there's no clergy in the Baha'i faith. So, I'm just a now unemployed actor dude in LA giving my opinion. I'm not official, neither is Dave, none of us. So this is just my personal experience. There's the elimination of racial prejudice, one of the key teachings in the Baha'i faith, working for racial and social justice issues around that. The harmony of science and religion, the elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, universal education. These, again, are the social teachings I grew up with as a young Baha'i kid in the Seattle area, and it was really beautiful. There was a lot of singing. There was a lot of praying. We had Native American Baha'is trooping through, African American Baha'is, multiracial choirs of Baha'is coming through our house. And it was like a time that I said that people believed that peace was possible. They also believed that there might be a spiritual solution to the world's problems. Not everyone, but there was a large component of the population during that time. Cat Stevens became a Muslim. The Beatles met the Maharishi. People were exploring alternative spiritual paths and believed that there might be, that enlightenment might work hand in hand with the social justice revolution that was happening, at least in the United States, with the counterculture movement, with the civil rights movement, and the anti-war movement, that there might be a spiritual enlightenment component to all that that might help lead us towards personal enlightenment as well as social enlightenment as well. So I learned this key concept. I mentioned it briefly before. I stole this graphic from BahaiTeachings.org. Thank you. Cool rainbow graphic. This concept, most of you know this. Some of you may not be familiar with it, but for the Baha'is, we're followers of all the world's religions. We believe in the divinity of Muhammad and the Quran, of Christ and the Bible, of Buddha and the Dhammapadas, of Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita. That all of these divine teachers are come from one source, gradually, evolutionarily, bringing mankind into some kind of spiritual maturity. We're not there yet. We're in our spiritual adolescence. Then we will go to our spiritual rehab as we hit bottom, and we'll come out the other side spiritually mature, something like that. I'm just making that part up. So here I found this lovely graphic of a city of gold and people worshiping it in clouds. And you might say, Rainn, why is that silly graphic on the screen? Well, folks, I'll tell you, because there was a story I remember. My father, Robert Wilson, was a great artist and a great Baha'i teacher. And I remember this happening when I was a kid. As a Baha'i, if someone knocked on the door and they were Jehovah's Witness or some sect of Mormonism or Christianity, we would invite them in and we would have a discussion with them about, we would say, what do you believe in? And we'll share what we believe in. We would talk about the Bible and have study groups. And we would serve them coffee. We'd cook them breakfast. They were really shocked by this. And one time my dad said to this group, someone mentioned the kingdom of God on earth. And my dad said, what is your belief about the kingdom of God on earth? And the kind of born again folks were like, well, we believe that there will be a certain day and there'll be a rumbling in the sky and lightning, and there's going to be clouds, and those clouds are going to part, and they were going to hear angels singing and trumpets, and then down from the sky will come this beautiful city of gold and silver filled with angels. Lord Jesus Christ will be there, and all the believers will get on the city, and that will float back up, and then that's the kingdom of God on earth. And they said, what is the Baha'i belief on the kingdom of God on earth? And my dad said, well, it's very similar. It's very similar. So there's thunder, and there's lightning, and there's clouds, and the clouds start to kind of rumble apart and split apart, and there's trumpets and angels, but instead of a city coming down, there's bags of cement and concrete, some hammers, some nails, you know, some tool belts, and uh, and then down floats a piece of paper, very, very slowly wafting down, landing on top of the pile of materials, the bricks and whatnot, and mortar. And it says, "Kingdom of God on earth, build it yourself kit." Hence this graphic of these very serious white people on a work site. That's the best I could find. This isn't a time for me to go deep into my life journey, but I just want to posit that this was the background that I was born and raised into. And then moving forward, I really wanted to become, long story, very long story, very, very short. I wanted to become an actor more than anything else. So I ended up moving to New York City and studying acting. And I jettisoned the faith of my childhood. I didn't want anything to do with my parents and their beliefs. I didn't want morality hanging over my head. I'd been greatly influenced by what I was hearing from my friends about God being some really old-fashioned, outdated, outmoded belief system for sissies that needed some daddy figure, some sky daddy, to help them out. That it was for grandmothers. It was ancient. That we didn't need any of that nonsense. So I really went into a time of being an atheist, and I moved to New York City, and I just wanted to be an actor, and I went to acting school, and then I did theater for 10 years before I did any TV or film, and did a lot of Shakespeare and whatnot all over the U.S. and tours, and really just jettisoned anything having to do with spirituality. Again, long story, very, very short. What happened for me was I started to become very unhappy. And I had what I look at now as a number of mental health issues myself. I had crippling anxiety attacks, became very, very depressed off and on for years. I had addiction issues. Times got very, very dark, and it wasn't working. I was a professional actor, which was beyond my wildest dreams. I was doing plays on Broadway, and I was working as an actor. It was amazing, but I was deeply, deeply unhappy and imbalanced in my life. And this kind of forced me, as oftentimes have to be forced into a belief system, with my kind of cheek pressed into the pavement in my late 20s, to kind of go, hey, maybe I was rash to have jettisoned all this belief. Fine, maybe I'm not a Baha'i, but did I really need to throw out everything and anything having to do with spirituality? Did I really have to throw out prayer, meditation, holy writings, connection with nature, anything having to do with a belief in something greater than myself? Because I've been focused just on myself for a good 10 years, just my career, how I'm feeling, my physical needs and sensations. And it's not really working out how I thought it was. I mean, I had so many wonderful things happening in my life. I was with my now wife. We've been partner of 30 years. She's amazing. She's in the other room. She's walking the dogs, actually. But I was unhappy, and it wasn't working. So that's when I undertook a spiritual journey for myself, born out of these, now that I see, mental health issues. Therapy, certainly. Recovery, certainly. But most importantly, a spiritual journey to say, hey, wait a minute. What do I believe? Do I believe in God? Do I believe there's something more to this physical universe, or is it just a a happy coincidence in an amalgam of molecules bouncing together without any meaning, purpose, or anything higher. It's just this is this physical universe reality, and this is the way it's always been. So I read the holy books of the world, literally like all of them. And I started going to church, and I went to Buddhist meetings, and I went to synagogues, and I met with Muslims, and I started taking it very seriously. And that eventually led me back to the Baha'i faith, where I was able to, and maybe for a lot of Baha'is that are on here right now, they can relate to this, to inherit no longer the faith of my parents, but to have my own set of beliefs based in the writings of the Baha'i faith, because I was able to read at long last, like I do a deep dive into the Dawn Breakers and the Gleanings and the Katabi and Epistle of the Son of the Wolf and God Passes By and so many biographies of famous Baha'is. And so I was able to kind of come back to a stronger foundational belief in my religion that wasn't just born of my parents. And I learned a couple things along the way. I talked about the mental health struggles, and I found this very beautiful prayer I wanted to share with you. I stole it from Pinterest. But this prayer really meant a lot to me, and I'll say it for you now. So, as a Baha'i, when we pray, I think it's very interesting that in the United States, half the country prays and doesn't meditate, and half the country meditates and doesn't pray. The kind of like more secular, liberal yoga side of the country is all into meditations, very popular, and the apps. And then the born again fundamentalist quote is very into praying, not so much into meditation. So there's we're dichotomized. Is that a word? Even in our spiritual practice. But this prayer meant a lot. So in prayer, I'm turning my heart to the divine creative force of the universe. O God, refresh and gladden my spirit. Purify my heart. Illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. O God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. O God, thou art more friend to me than I am to myself. I dedicate myself to thee, O Lord. So many beautiful thoughts contained in this prayer, and it brought me great solace, as well as other teachings in the Baha'i faith that relate to one's personal development, one's personal serenity, one's personal happiness, one's personal enlightenment. A pledge: I will no longer be full of anxiety, I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. That we're surrendering to God. That God is more friend to us than we are to ourselves. That's a pretty revolutionary concept. So much beauty in this prayer, and it helped me a great deal in my struggles. Another thing that came to light as I came back into the Baha'i faith was the importance of the arts in the Baha'i faith. We heard Yassi's beautiful song earlier, and I was thinking about this as I was listening to her sing. The eldest son of Baha'u'llah, his name is Abdul Baha, he wrote this in a letter to a believer. And he said, I rejoice to hear that thou hast, I think there's a word missing, I don't know why, hast taken pains with thine art. For in this wonderful new age, art is worship. Art is worship. The more thou strivest to perfect it, the closer wilt thou come to God. What bestowal could be greater than this, that one's art should be even as the act of worshiping the Lord? That is to say, when thy fingers grasp the paintbrush, it is as if thou wert at prayer in the temple. What bestowal could be greater than making of art is the same as worshiping the Lord? When your fingers grasp the paintbrush, it is it is as if thou wert at prayer in the temple. So I said a prayer just now. Yossi sang a song. Some of you are artists. Some of you are, because there's so many Persians, there's going to be a lot of dentists out there, which is fabulous, which is a kind of art. So it's its own artistry. But everyone is an artist in a way. But the making of art is the same as prayer. That's a revolutionary concept. And this brought me great solace because here I was chugging away on my career, doing plays and doing workshops and readings and cabarets and getting my friends together and, trying to make a living as an artist. And all of that time and work and effort that I had put into my training as an actor and whatnot was worship. So it's not like I had really jettisoned spirituality. I had just gone into a different mode of spirituality. Oh, this is a corny graphic. I don't know where I got that one. Another concept that I hadn't really studied as much previously was the independent investigation of truth, and realized that this journey that I was on, folks, finding the truth for myself and falling down along the way several times, is part of our spiritual journey. Independent investigation of truth. Independent investigation of truth. Now, this may sound obvious to you guys. Well, of course, we find the truth for ourselves. Like, I went to a Buddhist yoga class, and then I was a kayaking instructor, and then I read Eckhart Tolle, and then I went to Tony Robbins, and I'm finding the truth for myself, right? Well, this was revolutionary when Baha'u'llah said it in the mid-19th century. One didn't find the truth for oneself back then. One accepted the truth of one's parents and the truth of one's tribe and the truth of one's village. There wasn't the option of like, I'm going to do macrame and take a gap year. That wasn't, that didn't exist back then. But I do think that for the challenge for young people now in finding the truth for oneself, it's not necessarily about like, what religion am I going to believe in? Or do I believe in God or anything like that? Like, we need to find the truth for ourselves. What is that? What is the truth with a capital T, truth? Our physical reality is what we in America focus on. Just look at who's most popular on Instagram. All they focus on is their material reality, the stuff they have, the fame they have, the bodies they have. Well, our spiritual reality is just as much a part of reality as our physical reality. Science, this being the study of our physical reality, and spirituality, religion being the study of our spiritual reality. And for young people, I think a lot of the problem that, as I diagnose it, is for a lot of young people, they don't really seriously question the reality that's fed to them on the news, on the media, on the Twitter, on the Instagram. It's kind of like questioning the individual investigation of truth is also finding the truth that might be separate from what Western civilization deems as the truth, or whatever's current or au courant in Western civilization. For instance, materialism, consumerism. I'm going to be happy by having more stuff. I'm going to be happy by having more friends and having greater status. These things are going to bring me kind of happiness. They don't, as a matter of fact. If you do a deep dive, materialism is actually the worst determiner of happiness. That's good, happinism. When you study positive psychology, this isn't even like a Buddhist thing. It's just like a science thing. There's a lot more to it than that. But anyways, so individual investigation of truth became very important to me. Another thing that I learned as I started doing these Ruhi books, these Ruhi studies, some of you may have done some of them. They're really fascinating series of books about spiritual topics and discussions with a Baha'i theme and inspiration, is I learned about my twofold moral purpose. And this put things into perspective for me. So why am I a Baha'i? That's the name of the talk. Here's another reason why I'm a Baha'i. Because I have a twofold moral purpose. One is I read that prayer, right? That's a prayer that has to do with my personal path toward my perfection of spiritual virtues, my enlightenment, my own. And this is what a lot of people think in the Western world about what religion, the role of religion, is to enlighten oneself, bring solace, bring peace, bring harmony. increase compassion. And this is super important as part of our spiritual development. In the Baha'i context, we are developing our spiritual virtues, our kindness, our patience, our humility, our lovingness, our all-encompassing compassionness. Um, and but it's in this little garden of our self, right? The other part of my twofold moral purpose is selfless service to the world and to others and to humanity, social justice, building community, service to others. And this is a large part of what the Baha'i faith is about as you come to study it more and more, is yes, we can pray and we can meditate and work on ourselves and have our feelings and, work on our personal spiritual enlightenment and solace and serenity. But part of our role and what humanity is crying out for in this day and age, what the world is crying out for, is service to others, to make the world more just, more equitable, more kind, more compassionate, to uplift, inspire, and aid humanity to heal. People often, because they're not necessarily questioning things with an individual investigation of truth, take the party line, at least in the United States, that that's the role of philanthropy and politics. A nonprofit helps people, and if I get the right politician in and they get the right piece of legislation in, then that will help humanity. But they don't view it as the realm of religion or spirituality. So, but this was very enlightening to me, and realizing, and this is a great guide to me, like on a daily basis, I can work on my spiritual enlightenment. I can also work on making the world a better place. These two they're like a yin and yang. It's not even like a dichotomy. They're encircling with one another. They aid one another. The more I serve other people, the more I gain personally. The more I gain personally and grow personally, the more I'm able to help other people. And it is like a beautiful spiral. This is a beautiful quote I found from the Universal House of Justice. This is the chief governing body of the Baha'i faith, and they put out some dynamite letters and guidance that Baha'is really revere and attempt to follow. This was a letter to the Iranian youth. I forget when it came out. The key to resolving these social ills rests in the hands of a youthful generation convinced of the nobility of human beings, eagerly seeking a deeper understanding of the true purpose of existence, able to distinguish between divine religion and mere superstition, clear in the view of science and religion as two independent yet complementary systems of knowledge that propel human progress, conscious of and drawn to the beauty and power of unity in diversity, secure in the knowledge that real glory is to be found in service to one's country and to the peoples of the world, and mindful that the acquisition of wealth is praiseworthy only insofar as it is attained through just means and expended for benevolent purposes, for the promotion of knowledge and toward the common good. Thus must our precious youth prepare themselves to shoulder the tremendous responsibilities that await them, and thus will they prove immune to the atmosphere of greed that surrounds them and press forward unwavering in the pursuit of their exalted goals. I love this because it's about young people and what is required of young people. The nobility of human beings, the true purpose of existence, the unity of science and religion, the unity in diversity, that real glory is to be found in service. Buckminster Fuller. Don't know much about him. I know about the buckyballs, a little bit about his architecture, physics work, as well as his philosophy. But I love this quote. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. This goes hand in hand with building that kingdom of God on earth. Baha'is are not fighting the existing reality. We're building a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that new model is a world based on spiritual principles, not just material principles. Coming back to the quote, the betterment of the world can be accomplished through pure and goodly deeds and through commendable and seemly conduct. That is why I am a Baha'i. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. Big shout out to Madagascar. Whoop, whoop. And Dave, if we want to do some questions, whatever
Absolutely.
you want.
Dear Rainn, thank you very much for explaining that. It's very difficult, of course, to get it down concisely as to the reasons why you are a Baha'i. We've had some questions that have come through already. And the first one, dear Rainn, is how exactly has your life changed as a Baha'i? And why would you say you couldn't just focus on being a good person?
Great question. Well, it's certainly important that everyone focus on being a good person. That really is where it starts. I would say that besides focusing on being a good person, it's also focusing on being an enlightened person. What does that mean, enlightened? Well, it certainly means reading books and learning all the time and being curious and filled with awe about the natural world and about the belief systems around the globe. But if one is seeking enlightenment, one is looking for the truth. And to me, there is a larger truth than just being a good person. It's a larger truth than just, hey, I'm this crazy assemblage of molecules in the shape of this human being, and I have this personality, and I have these good qualities and these bad qualities, and I'm just going to be a generally good person. For a long time in the United States, it was kind of thought like, be a good person, don't hurt anybody else, and that's fine. That's really all that it takes. But that doesn't really cut it anymore, does it? We can't just kind of be a good person and not hurt anybody else. We actually have to be a good person and help other people. And I would say that for me, like I talked about that twofold moral purpose, it gives my life clarity. I may talk highfalutin sometimes, but I'm a very meat and potatoes guy. It's like when I find that twofold moral purpose, it's just like, oh, easy. Make myself better. Help the world. Now, you don't need to be a Baha'i to do that. You could be a Muslim and do that. You can be a Christian and do that. You can be an atheist and do that. That's all fine and well. But for my journey, as I went on this journey, I believed that Baha'u'llah was who he said he was. I believed that all of these divine teachers are part of one ever-flowing, ever-continuing religion. Source from one God. So part of my enlightenment was to see, oh, I believe that's reality. I think that the way Baha'u'llah describes reality is a message from our Creator, is a revelation from our Creator for this day and age. And we're going to need something a little bit more. We're going to remember the Buckminster Fuller. We're going to need a new system. We can't just kind of like keep putting Band-Aids on an old system. And what's that system going to be? I believe that system needs to be based on spiritual principles. And for humanity to mature, we don't just need better politics and better economics and better environmentalism. We need to reinvigorate and re-explore the spiritual principles that underlie economics and politics and environmentalism.
Thank you very much, dear Rainn. Thank you very much for the question. This next question comes from Mike Bond out in China, joining us. It's quite late out there at the moment. He's asking, have you had any crazy experiences, whether it's feeling something or seeing something through the power of prayer? You've touched on prayer, of course. Anything you could share with regards to that?
Wow, you went crazy experiences. Yeah, I've had a number of really deeply personal and kind of mind-blowing, soul-enlightening experiences through prayer. Some of them are very personal, and I'm not going to share, even though us Americans would love to spill our guts to everyone. I've worked a couple of times in the UK, and it's so funny when Americans are like, yeah, so then I was a drug addict, and then my dad hit me, and everyone in the UK is like, oh my God, why are they revealing all this deeply personal information to us? I will say one of them has been pretty recent, and that is about the passing of my father, who died about 7 months ago. And we were very close, and he was a great Baha'i teacher, and it was it was a traumatic death. It happened in surgery, and he was in the ICU for days. Um, it wasn't COVID; it was heart issues, and some really dark times and difficult times of taking in his passing and missing him greatly, praying. And there isn't some kind of magic thing where like he appeared to me in a dream or some vision of him or something like that. But, Baha'is believe that after we slough off these meat suits and we continue on our spiritual journey through the infinite worlds of God, that we can commune and connect with uh, our loved ones. They become, for lack of a better word, angels, on their spiritual journey, but they're close to us and connected to us. And so I've had some really beautiful, prayerful connectivity with the spirit soul of my father who has passed on. It's not like I hear his voice like, Rainn, pick up your socks or anything like that, but just a connection and an inspiration. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, dear Rainn. Another question has come in from Matthew Berham Singh in East London. He's asking, there are a lot of people who believe spirituality and religious belief are two separate phenomena, and that one can be spiritual without having any religious belief. What is your view about that?
Yeah, great point. Super great point. And I think it's really important for people to understand that. It's funny. I was talking about working in England. So I did a movie there last year called Blackbird with Kate Winslet. No one saw it. Don't worry. It's good though. And the director, Roger Michell, is a great UK British director. Brilliant. And we visited the cathedral nearby. I forget the town we were in. West Wickingham, Worcestershire, Spotshire, Shropshireville. And
you remember it then? Yeah, it's very good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good it came back to me. As soon as I started. Yeah. He was like, so you're into religion? You're a Baha'i. I was like, I don't know that was his accent, but that's my general British accent. And I was like, yeah, I am. And he's like, you believe in God? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, oh, I don't. I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. He's like, oh, yes. I was dragged to church every day. We had to go to noon mass, and I was dragged in and made to do confession, and I had to be an altar boy, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh. And then we ended the discussion, and in my head, I was like, oh, okay. So he doesn't believe in God because his parents dragged him into church every day. So that doesn't seem very like he's given a whole lot of thought to the possibility that there might be something divine in the world, separate and removed from the religious strictures and tortures that he underwent as a child. And we fortunately got to talk about that a bunch later, and it was a really fun discussion. But I think that it is important to separate the two, because a lot of people reject spirituality because of unpleasant experiences they've had in religion. And then the next step is embracing spirituality and separating that from religion. Like, I love being spiritual. I pray and meditate, or I meditate. Maybe I don't pray so much, but I believe there's something larger out there, nature. I read Eckhart Tolle and I read the Dalai Lama and I listen to Oprah, but I could never be a part of an organized religion. And that's beautiful. And I think that's fine. But again, going back to the slideshow, and that's why I hope you were watching my slideshow, because there's a twofold moral purpose. It's not only our own personal serenity, peace, and salvation, it's making the world a better place. And just like Buckminster Fuller said, it's about creating a new system. And just like that letter from the Universal House of Justice and that call to action to the young people in the world, I just believe that the Baha'i faith contains a plan for the spiritual transformation of humankind. And you can't get that with an occasional yoga class, meditation app, Eckhart Tolle book, Russell Brand podcast, which I love all of that. I love yoga classes, meditation apps, Russell Brand apps. Eckhart Tolle is my favorite. Like I love that stuff, and I spend a lot of time in that stuff, but I also want a framework for action that for me works as the Baha'i faith.
Thank you very much, dear Rainn. Another question from Patrick Thomas in Bosnia, who's asking, what is the end game according to Baha'is? Is it enlightenment or a continuous evolution to be a better version of yourself, and enlightenment as a side effect of that continuous evolution?
Again, I'll just take you back to that idea of that twofold moral purpose being like a yin and a yang. So the end game is both. The end game is become a better person, make the world a better place. There's a dance between the two. They feed each other. It's a snake biting its own tail. It's a yin and a yang. I make myself a better person so that my batteries are filled with love, and I can take that out and do service to others. I do that service from others. It recharges my batteries. My batteries are more full. I can give service to others. And those things work in a dance. So the end game is both personal, spiritual fulfillment, wellness, wholeness, and doing whatever we can with those qualities that God gave us to uplift and help other people. And I do believe, for me, that it's important to have a systematic effort in that regard. And that's one of the things that, for me, again, the topic of this talk is why I am a Baha'i. So other Baha'is might have different reasons, but I think the Baha'i systematic approach to the spiritual transformation of humanity is where it's at.
Awesome. Thank you, Rainn. Another question from Kathy Yazhari in Cambodia. She wants to know, being a Baha'i, has that in any way affected when you were playing the character Dwight Schrute in The Office? There's a couple of Office fans here, and they're intrigued to know if, as an artist, essentially, if that's affected you in any way, shape, or form.
I love that there's Office fans on here. I especially love that there's Office fans from Cambodia. You get The Office in Cambodia? Y'all, cray. I would say that, me being a Baha'i didn't really affect Dwight Schrute, but part of my journey was while I was doing The Office, I felt bifurcated. The Universal House of Justice talks about creating a coherent life. I felt bifurcated in like, here I am playing this silly sitcom character who's such a selfish doofus, and here I am talking about world peace and creating Soul Pancake and trying to be a spiritual person and struggling, falling down a lot, making a lot of mistakes along the way. And this felt like two realities, right? But like I said before, as I came back to time and time again about how art is the same as worship, I realized that I am uniquely qualified to bring certain very bizarre characters to life and to make people laugh because I am a ridiculous human being. And I have a big, weird head and face. And I've studied clowning, and I've been a comedy nerd since I was a little kid. And I'm a spiritual being. So both of these two things are not in kind of opposition, but in harmony with one another. And I see that more and more as the legend of The Office has kind of lived on. You guys did a version in the UK. There's some, you did like, I think there were like 12 episodes of some version of it. Anyway, in our 200 episodes that we did, I see now more and more like people writing in like, thank you. This got me through hard times. It got me through this pandemic. My parents were getting a divorce and I watched the episodes. It uplifted my heart. It made me laugh. It took my mind off my problems. So there is a service component to being an entertainer as well that I think is often lost.
Thank you, dear Rainn. We have done a couple of versions. In fact, Ricky, your friend, is also an acquaintance of mine. He's from my town here in Reading, went to my mum's school. I think he did something in the UK with it. I'm not too sure exactly. Somebody's asking about what advice you would give to artistic, creative people in pursuing their crafts alongside with trying to maintain a spiritual life. Again, some of the people seem to believe that there's this dichotomy between the two, Rainn, and I think you're speaking to this already, in that they're one and the same in terms of worship.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I think you answered it exactly correctly. First of all, I think that it's super important to study your craft and work on your craft and study with master craftsmen of your craft with a spirit of humility and a humble posture of learning, to quote another Baha'i phrase. And that never ends. That's decades, that's not years. And because remember, even in that letter by Abdul Baha, it's like the perfection of your craft. How do you perfect your craft? That doesn't mean you whip out your guitar and play some songs at holy days and that's perfecting your craft. It's studying it deeply and to not see it as separate from the other work that you do. It's, again, creating a coherent life. What does that mean? That see, we have such compartmentalized lives in the United States these days. It's like, here's my hobbies, here's my friends, my mates, my chums, here's my marriage and family, the old ball and chain. Here's my work that I don't really like. Here's my church on Sundays, or over here, here's the stuff I really love to do. And here's occasional charity or service project I did. I ran a marathon to raise money over here. And there are these different boxes and compartments. So I think my task has been to kind of like pull these all together. Now, I'm fortunate to get to do professionally a job that I adore, and I love it. I've been blessed with a career, but it's about moving all of these things together into one coherent, cohesive, integrated integrity. The word integrity comes from the word integration as the same root. So to have integrity is to have an integration, to be fully who you are on this planet. It takes a lot of work.
Hope to get there one day. Thank you, Rainn. Someone was asking how in Christianity, His Holiness Christ has suffered greatly, as have many of the early believers. Has this been something that's happened with the Baha'is at all?
Yes, that's a great topic for another fireside. Baha'u'llah spent his entire life being tortured, imprisoned, what he owned taken away from him, friends and family members brutally killed, banished from country to country. And there's a quote by Baha'u'llah: "The ancient beauty hath consented to be bound with chains that mankind may be released from its bondage. He hath accepted to be made a prisoner that the whole world may attain unto true liberty. He hath drained to its dregs the cups of sorrow, that all the peoples of the earth may attain to abiding joy and be filled with gladness. This is the mercy of your Lord." His imprisonment and his suffering is something he took on as part of him giving this gift of spiritual revelation, which would free us from ourselves. You know, the story of Abdul Baha, we're coming up on the 100-year centenary of the passing of Abdul Baha. He's the eldest son of Baha'u'llah. When he was passing the Statue of Liberty, he was being interviewed by some reporters on his way into New York Harbor. And he pointed to the Statue of Liberty and he said, "Here's a symbol of freedom for the West, for the United States." He said, "I was in prison for 40, 50 years. He came at 69 to the United States. Can you imagine? Traveled for almost a year around North America. And he said, "But I have been in prison for 40 or 50 years, but the greatest freedom has nothing to do with place. I'm not more free now. The greatest freedom is freedom from self."
Very true indeed. Thank you, dear Rainn. Thank you very much. Someone's asking if there is anything in the Baha'i faith you find challenging to accept, and do you have any strategies to reconcile these things?
Yeah, there's things I struggle with about the Baha'i faith. There's a lot I struggle with. I think that's part of faith. Faith isn't kind of blind totality of acceptance. Maybe it is, but I can't go there. There's teachings I struggle with. There's ways Baha'is do things on a local level and a global level that I struggle with. I have my own personal struggles, as a human being. I can be very impatient. I can be judgmental. I can be, my ego is quite huge. And I have, I'm constantly in kind of a boxing match with my own self. So there's a lot of struggle there.
Thank you very much, Deepen. Someone's asking, do you have any advice or any strategies to cope with feeling further away from God? Because you have those times, of course. As a person of faith, you sometimes feel very close to the Creator. Everything's all good. You're being high-fived by God, spiritually speaking, one may say. I may never vote again. But you have these things, but then sometimes you feel distant as well. Are there any things that you personally would suggest that people could do to try and feel closer to God?
Certainly, there's a ton one can do, and there's a lot of writing about this. But for Baha'is, the two pillars, the two anchors of faith are fasting and obligatory prayer. They are the sun and the moon of belief. We just finished the Baha'i fast. The Baha'i fast, some Baha'is are like, oh, I love the fast, and I feel so enlightened, and I love it, and it's my favorite. I can't wait for the fast. And it's like, I hate the fast. It sucks. It's hard. It's so hard, and I really struggle in the fast. But I'm always grateful when it's done, and I'm grateful that I've undertaken it to the best of my ability. For those that don't know, Baha'is fast for 19 days from sunrise to sunset. So we're not just not eating for 19 days, but no food or drink from sunrise to sunset. It's similar. It's like a mini Ramadan in a cooler time of the year. So when I'm finished, I'm so much more connected to God. And there's also obligatory prayer that Baha'is say every day. And I would say, if one focuses on one's obligatory prayer, that's a daily turning, a daily obeisance, acquiescence, a surrender to God. That's part of that prayerful action that can bring us closer to God. But there's many other ways. But the things that Baha'is do, we read the holy writings in the morning and the evening. We say obligatory prayer. We do fasting. These are things that keep us anchored to our true purpose.
Thank you very much, dear Rainn. A question from Carolina Daimi in Puerto Venus, which I imagine to be in Spain, a very sunny part of the world, more so than England. And you see, in England, we're used to rain in general, but in your greater sense. So we're glad to have you not falling upon our heads here. They want to know, what would you say to people who say that religion causes destruction and is a cause for disunity?
It is. Yeah, it has been. It's horrific. Someone asked earlier about, can you be spiritual without being religious? And Abdu'l-Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, says that if religion be a cause of disunity, then irreligion is certainly to be preferred, meaning no religion. The main purpose of religion is to bring people together in love and harmony and worship and unity. And we see in the world, and I understand why people are irreligious for a good reason. Just like Abdu'l-Baha said, if there's disunity, it's better to be irreligious. This is why religion is refreshed every 500 or 1,000 years or so, because we need another stab at it. We think nothing of, like, in our computers, right? Oh, there's a new operating system. Oh, Apple came out with a new operating system. I have to upgrade my operating system or my Adobe or my Windows, whatever. Oh, it's 3.0 or it's Cougar or Leprechaun or Grand Teton or Grand Sierra or whatever they call the new operating system. It doesn't chuck out the old operating system. It builds on top of the operating system. We think nothing of this in technology. Why do we not think of this way spiritually? Baha'u'llah is not chucking out the Quran. Baha'u'llah is not chucking out the Bible or the Torah, or the Bhagavad Gita. He's building upon it. It's a new kind of spiritual operating system.
Very good point, dear Rainn. Someone else is asking the question, saying, I am a Muslim and come from a Muslim background. Why would I want to waver my faith in the Prophet, referring to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and look into the Baha'i faith?
Excellent question. As a Baha'i, I feel like as if I am also a Muslim. And I have incredible reverence for the Prophet Muhammad, the friend of God, the messenger of God, the mouthpiece of God. As a Baha'i, I have great reverence and love for Jesus and a relationship with Jesus and a deeper connection to Jesus and to the Buddha. So by being a member of the Baha'i Faith, one doesn't have to do any wavering, jettisoning, eliminating of these other faiths as we take on Baha'i beliefs. It's simply a new perspective. And I'm sure there's many other more articulate ways to answer that question, but essentially you can be a Baha'i and a Muslim at the same time, just like that operating system. We should maybe just take like one or two more and then wind it up here, Dave.
Yeah, dear Rainn, we've got another 74 questions.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
So,
and they're mainly to do with
right.
fans from the English office, the funnier version of the office, as they have said. One of the questions, dear Rainn, was with regards to Oprah Winfrey. You had the honor of giving her the pleasure of meeting you and, of course, talking about the Baha'i faith on Super Soul Sunday. How was it meeting her and sharing the faith with her? Did she have any reaction to it in particular?
It's funny. I've had so many Baha'is come up and be like, they saw that interview and they're like, oh my God, will Oprah become a Baha'i? Is Oprah going to be a Baha'i? I was like, no, she's an interviewer. And interviewers show great enthusiasm and curiosity for what they're talking to someone about. That doesn't mean that she's going to become a Baha'i. She's not very interested in an organized religion, and for very good reason. But listen, for a long time in the United States, kind of the only thing happening in the media that had anything to do with spirituality was Oprah Winfrey. So I really salute her for good 10 or 15 years. She was doing her podcast and Super Soul Sunday, kind of focusing on, she brought wonderful spiritual teachers like Thich Nhat Hanh, like Eckhart Tolle, like the Reverend Rob Bell, some incredible spiritual teachers to audiences of millions, and got people thinking about spiritual concepts in a new way, and just played a really important role in that. So I'm grateful to her.
Amazing. And dear Rainn, the last question from me, for those people who are interested in spirituality or the Baha'i faith, is there any advice you'd give anyone on their spiritual journey? You've made the point we don't have any clergy in the Baha'i faith. Your views are just your own views, but is there anything you would suggest for anyone?
You can't become a Baha'i. We're full up. We have enough Baha'is. We don't need any more. Sorry. You should have come on like 2019. We could have used a few more, but we're really full up. No, I'm just kidding. So, Dave, I think you could answer that question probably better than me. I mean, this talk was not to convert you to the Baha'i faith. I'm sharing why I am a Baha'i. If you want to learn more about the Baha'i faith, there's so many resources. Baha'i.org is a great website. Dave, you've got these wonderful talks going on here. There's probably Baha'is in your community doing study groups on those Ruhi books that I talked about. And even if you're not interested in like becoming a Baha'i, like work with us. That's the main thing. Whatever your belief is, agnostic, atheist, Muslim, Christian, don't know, none of the above, all of the above, like work with us side by side in making the world a better place. There's devotional gatherings that Baha'is have of people of all faiths coming together to pray. Join us in service projects. Let's work together.
Absolutely. Dear Rainn, thank you very much. It's been incredibly insightful. We're going to finish with Dawn Paris, who's going to be singing this quote attributed to Abdul Baha: "Where there is love, nothing is too much trouble." And there is always time, so she's going to be singing that out for us. Rainn, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you and trying to understand, and it's a very personal thing that you're sharing as to why you yourself are a Baha'i, and it's a journey that we go on through the ups and downs, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of everyone here that's going through that journey. And of course, the Soul Pancake website is fantastic for chewing on these life's big questions. So we do thank you, dear Rainn, for giving up the time all the way in California, where I imagine it's quite warm at the moment, is it?
You tell me.
Would you be offended if I said I hate you?
Not in the slightest.
I wouldn't say it, but I'm thinking it, Rainn. It's cold here, it's miserable here in the UK, and the rain is descending upon us, but the greatest rain has arrived indeed. So thank you very much. You are incredibly kind for coming and sharing with us. And you mentioned when speaking about the sufferings of the Baha'is, you mentioned that's maybe a topic for another fireside. So we accept your offer to come on at a later date and share that with us. Thank you so very much, Rainn. And now I'll pass you on to Dear Dawn Paris.
Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble. Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble. Nothing is too much trouble, and there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble. Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble, and there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble. Where there is love, where there is love, nothing is too much trouble, nothing is too much trouble, and there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh, there is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. There is always time, time, time. Oh.